Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our Solidarity Roundtable. I want to thank each of you for joining the call, but also know that each and every one of you are in my thoughts and in my prayers as we continue to work through COVID-19. And with the flooding situation, it is just, we're going to continue to work together to bring some positive solutions to our community. I know many of you are getting weary and are anxious to get out and about, but I just want to encourage you to hold steady. We've seen some of our restrictions were a little bit loosened today, but we still need to use caution. So tonight, I want to spend some time discussing the importance of unions in our community. And I also would like to talk about some of the issues that unions and labor are facing right now. But also, I wanted to talk tonight about how we're working through these difficult times. I know that COVID-19 has affected many on our call tonight, but I also want to talk about the tools that we'll need to be successful moving forward. We do have some questions that have been prepared, but I want this conversation, like always, to be interactive. So please use the comment section below, because we're going to make sure that we reach out to each and every comment that we receive tonight. It's important more than ever that we receive factual information and that we're giving out that factual information as well. So if you're joining us via video chat, please use your respective comment box. But I am so looking forward to each of your questions tonight. We have a really dynamic panel. Some warriors in the labor movement are joining us tonight, so we're going to bring them on in just a few moments. But I also want to let you know that you can tune into this conversation via Facebook Live, also via YouTube. Please know that my campaign is your campaign. So I want to make sure that we have a clear set of priorities that we're going to discuss tonight and a robust policy agenda that will help our community move forward. I'm so pleased tonight to be joined by some great friends in the labor movement. Tonight we have Executive Director of SEIU Local 517M, Mr. Jeremy Tripp.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here with you, Clint. For those who don't know, I'm the Executive Director of SEIU 517M. We are a state of Michigan union who represents both state of Michigan employees as well as folks in school and local government.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Jeremy. Also on our line tonight, we are joined by my good friend and brother, EJ Jenkins. He is the founder of Black Labor Week, and I am so excited that he took time to join us. He's traveling. He was visiting his son. He graduated today, so they're just wrapping up with their celebration parade out west. So thank you, EJ. He originally is hailing from Gary, Indiana, which is close to my heart, urban center, just like Saginaw. So EJ, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Clint. I really appreciate you having me on this this wonderful platform. And like you said, I am the founder of Black Labor Week, founded in 2012. The main goal is to, for one, put the Black community as a significant component within the labor movement. At the same time, create, giving us an opportunity to utilize the resources the labor movement actually has within the Black community, so we so we could be part of that component to help build it. And other than that, I also represent the next generation for the steel workers out of Local 1014, Sub 5, District 7. And I just, like I said, once again, I appreciate you having me on this wonderful platform.
Absolutely, EJ. And thank you for making time tonight. You've been doing some phenomenal things down in Indiana. Hopefully we can bring those up here and maybe partner with you in the future to continue our cause for economic justice and labor rights. Also joining us tonight is a good friend and a former neighbor that I found out, Andrea Acevedo. She hails from the city of Saginaw, also grew up in the shadows of Malleable Iron, about a block away from each other. And we just found that out the other day. And that's just the coolest thing, to have someone who has done so much for workers in our community. And well, ladies and gentlemen, this is Andrea Acevedo, president of SEIU Healthcare.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, that is amazing. I'm from Saginaw, Michigan. So my heart goes out to everyone that's been affected by not only COVID-19, but the flooding waters in mid-Michigan. And I am the president of Healthcare Michigan. We represent over 10,000 nursing home and hospital workers that are working right now in the front line of this pandemic. And we have over 200 nursing home workers specifically in Saginaw, Michigan.
Wow. Well, I had the chance to visit some of those facilities. Last week, I stopped out to Bridgeport and also Hoyt Nursing Home a few blocks away, just to show my appreciation and a little bit of love, because I know what our healthcare workers especially are going through right now is unprecedented. So we just want to show them our support as much as possible, because they are definitely on the front lines. So thank you, Andrea, for joining us. We do have another panelist who's going to be joining us in a little bit, Philan Johnson. He's a labor activist here in Saginaw and has several projects that he's working on. He'll talk about as he joins us. He was just having a little bit of technical difficulty. So, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us tonight. And I just want to remind our listeners to keep your questions coming. I will make sure that we get to them. We might not get to all of them this evening during our time for dinner and dialogue. But please know that we are committed to ensuring that you get a response to those questions. I'm going to ask all of our folks who are on if they would go ahead and share on their social media platforms, because we want to make sure that this conversation gets out. It's a really important topic tonight as we discuss solidarity and how we're going to work together. So I'm going to begin by posing a question to each of our panelists tonight. And I'm going to start with Jeremy, if that's okay. Why are unions important? And why, I guess that's where we can leave it. Why are unions important, especially at a time like this?
Well, I think that's always the $1 million question, isn't it? And I think that's something that unions even have asked themselves over the last 10 years, that we've always kind of known the work that we do on behalf of our members and really on behalf of all working people. But I don't think you could ever find a time in which unions are more relevant than today, and absolutely at this moment. I think what we've seen all across the country are that the only voice that is lifting up workers' rights, lifting up safety, lifting up ways that we can take care of our fellow Americans, that's coming from labor, organized labor. And without that voice being put on display, and without having these groups being able to collect all of this information, it just simply wouldn't happen. We've seen it play out with the CARES Act, being able to actually lobby our Congress people, as well as our senators, doing it on a state level, doing it on a local level, and doing it with employers. Many times we know that those employers just simply didn't have the information, and they're getting it firsthand from the union. And so I think we've really seen what organized labor can do and what its relevance is in the spotlight now more than ever.
Thank you, Jeremy. Let's go to Andrea.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything my brother Jeremy is saying, but right now, in the face of the global pandemic that we're seeing right now where unions are more needed than ever. Having a voice at the table and having a seat at the table for what's rightfully theirs. I mean, we're seeing workers that are in nursing homes and hospital in Michigan that are working the global pandemic that aren't even receiving hazard pay right now. And having their union and a voice to be able to negotiate and advocate for that, to create the change. We really have seen an impact. And listen, we're in Michigan. This is the heart and soul of where the labor movement began with UAW. And right now is the time of more than ever where unions and retail workers and state workers nursing home, hospital, healthcare workers really need to understand the organized power they have on how they can create differences within the workforce and better their lives with working conditions and wages, being a part of a union.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Andrea. Let's go to EJ. Oh, we might have just lost EJ. He's coming back.
All right.
EJ, why did
I'm
you?
trying to unmute it. I'm trying to unmute it.
Why did you join a union, and why are unions important?
You know what? So I came from a union background. Actually, my mother was a proud member of SEIU, HCII out of in Gary, and so I actually got hired into U.S. Steel and just automatically was union. Now, what got me involved with just the union background and seeing everything my mother went through and how passionately she fought for others, for other workers' rights, and I mean, we were just like on so many platforms. So I kind of knew the importance of being union from a very young age, and that was like pretty much to sum it all up, to have a better quality of life for everyone, and not in particular your own. So just come through that and to see the fundamentals and the values and the morals that my mother, my mother had coming up, pretty much got me to have the conviction as I got a little bit older to understand it, on why to understand the significance within labor unions. Now, as of today, and to go back and talk about the just for how I with the pandemic, like with the United Steelworkers, we stepped up tremendously with it, and I mean, we pretty much like just try to put workers as a whole up, like just pretty much in thoughts, and do whatever we could, no matter where they came from, to be a helping hand. That right there, and I saw that when not just United Steelworkers, but I saw that through a whole lot of labor fronts. And that right there is pretty much sums it up in a nutshell what we all about: the better quality of life for everyone. And during this pandemic, can't be displayed or expressed any better.
Absolutely. Thank you, EJ. The next question I have is: we know that 200 employees in our community were recently being in the process of being furloughed in Saginaw County. But I want to ask our panelists, what are some of the things that can be done to ensure that we are here to support our neighbors and friends? What are some of the things that we can do to encourage them and to support them as we go through this situation with a couple hundred employees in Saginaw County being furloughed? I'll start with Andre and then go to Jeremy.
So we have seen an impact of, healthcare workers even being furloughed. And luckily for being in a furlough situation and you have bargaining rights and you're able to negotiate the terms of being furloughed, for number one, we wanted to ensure healthcare, that healthcare was covered during a time of furlough, because that's really important, especially if you're a frontline worker who has potentially had exposure to COVID-19, and you still being able to be secure with healthcare for yourself and for your family. So really being able to get into the nuts and bolts of really ensuring that your status stays the same. And then also assisting with if it's the pandemic unemployment assistance or what they're eligible for, really being an outlet and a resource for folks, but then really also pushing back on the employer and making them prove that the furloughs are warranted and that there's really an actual need for the work that they're saying, is being suspended at this point in time. So having those rights under a collective bargaining agreement and then having something as a global pandemic that we've not seen before affect us. Usually, workers' protections don't really speak of something of this magnitude, but being able to have the voice and be an advocate for that is really the important steps that we've taken to ensure workers are protected during this vulnerable time.
Absolutely. Jeremy.
So I agree with everything she just said. So ditto, I'll give you that. I think moving in addition to that stuff, I think, some of the things that we have to look at right now is being understanding, right? That being being furloughed doesn't make your job or your contribution to the community or to society less than, right? That we're looking at this from a safety perspective, and we're also looking at this as how do we make sure that folks are taken care of from a holistic view. We need to be focused on mental health, right? When people are cooped up in their homes for 60 plus days at a time, for some, they want to get back to work. There's a lot of really nasty language out there that talks about people just wanting to collect a paycheck. We know firsthand that our members, they want to go to work, and it is not wrong for them to simply ask for one thing, and that's their safety, and not just for them, but for the folks that they take care of, for the schools that they work in, for the folks that they provide services to, that they want to make sure their families and friends and everyone else is taken care of. So I think in this time of furlough, with all of that, we also, not just understanding, but also just providing information, because we have an executive order issued almost every day. We have Congress that's passing and talking about bills that get changed and, amendments get put in. And I think providing that resource to people and then helping them kind of work through the mud as to what's real and what's not. Our local is in a really unique spot in the fact that we represent the folks at UIA. So we're able to call upon our own membership and say, can we provide some assistance throughout the state to folks just to give them simple tools on how do you actually put in a claim and how can you tell your mom, sister, brother, dad, mom, how to do it too.
Absolutely. And we're experiencing that. I mean, that's something that, each of us live every day with folks in our community, and it's hitting close to home who, throughout their career of 10, 20, 30 years have never had to seek assistance from the UIA, Unemployment Insurance Agency. So helping them navigate that. Thank you both. I'm going to ask Philan. I think Philan is on with us. I want to introduce Philan Johnson. He's a good friend. We've spent some time, especially last summer, on the picket line with workers who were on strike. He's involved in a lot of different voter initiatives in the community. And I'm just thankful to have Philan on the line with us. Good evening, Philan.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry about that, guys. I was trying to use my my MacBook, but it wouldn't allow me to do that. So I had to get on my iPad to get through. But I'm here. So
yes, and we're all getting accustomed to our new normal for the next little bit. So I know we've had quite a few meetings, Philan and I, on Zoom and different streaming platforms. But I wanted to ask you this question, Philan, because I know that you've been engaged recently in some assistance efforts. But recently, over 200 employees were in the process of being furloughed in Saginaw County. And I just wanted to hear from you as a labor leader in our community, what are some of the things that can be done to ensure that folks know that we're here for them and that we support our neighbors and our friends?
Well, I think you pretty much said it all. I mean, only thing we can do is be there for them. We know that jobs are becoming scarce right now. It was already tight, and then when this corona thing kind of happened, it kind of just sped things up, man. So only thing we can do is be there for a friend, as a friend. Try to encourage them in the best way we can. Coming from Local 699, UAW, I get it. I understand. We done lost some jobs. Even last week, we got rid of 100 people. I mean, they were actually going to probably lose their jobs anyways. I don't want to say it like that, but it just came quicker than what we kind of wanted, So in that process, I had like 10 people call me last week, and they were, just upset that they were, that they lost their job. And I just tried to encourage them. I said, look, all I can really tell you is, you're going to be okay. Just going to find a way, go to school. This might be an opportunity for you to just better yourself. I think most of us, a lot of times, we take things for granted, even myself. And I like to put myself in people's position before anything, because technically that could be one of us right here on this panel tonight. You know, so not having a job tomorrow. So I just try to encourage them to just look forward. It's gonna get better. But to answer your question, Clinton, it's really we're really powerless. We are, you know. So I just try to encourage people the best way I can so they can move forward. And it sucks. It really does suck, you know, because you don't want to lie to people. You don't want to sit here and say one thing, and we know in our heart it's going to be something totally different. So.
And that's part of the purpose why I wanted us to come together to discuss some of the tangible things that we can do. And sometimes, just like you and Jeremy both talked about, is just answering the phone and being a good friend, because we know that mental health is playing a huge role in our community right now, with folks like Jeremy having been locked up, and then we had a series of rainstorms, and then with the flooding. We're going to make it through this. We're going to make it through this, and we're going to do it together. And that's the power of the union and coming together in solidarity, because we know that we have a lot of brothers and sisters who are out there who are hurting. But yeah, that's why I wanted to really get you on this panel tonight, Philando, so we can talk a little bit about that. So thank you.
Yeah. Can I comment on that too before you move on to the next thing? The Corona thing that was one thing, and then when this flood just came, it just that was just something totally different. And it's kind of like you're doubling down or tripling down, actually, because we got a president who don't give a damn. So you're tripling down on all this stuff. You got our governor; she's doing the best she can do in the environment that she's dealt with. So I understand it. I get it. It sucks. Only thing we can do as people is just try to comfort people the best way we can comfort them, and let the chips fall where they fall, because we can be in those situations, and most likely we probably will be. That's why I try to put everything in perspective the best way I can.
Andrea, me and Andrea come from the same neighborhood, so we know what it's like to come from a community of need. When you don't know, we could get into some stories, but I will get that. I want to shift a little bit to talking about pensions. So I'm going to ask EJ, as soon as we get Andrea and Jeremy, I'm going to ask EJ to go right after Jeremy, because pensions are a huge issue, and they're always under attack in Michigan. We know that that's one of the fundamental tenets of unions, is pensions, and as part of the compensation plan, there's always an attack on pensions. And even right now, in your opinion, what is the responsibility of elected officials to protect our state and our country's pensions? Let's go with Andrea and then to Jeremy.
Good question. Pensions are always subject at the negotiation table when it's not even justifiable. There is nothing that is a significant impact of loss in revenue for organizations that are actually even proposing this. So it's really a key core piece that we feel that electeds could stand in solidarity against, especially if it's a non-for-profit organization. They mostly run like they're for-profit. They mostly run for profit in a lot of instances, or specifically for-profit organizations. When you're not having a real reasonable need to cut pension, decrease pension, or downright stop a pension, and not support a match to a pension plan that's offered. This is folks' livelihood. This is what they're going to have to depend on in the future. And I think it's really important for state elected officials to support workers. It's a way to really stabilize working class folks, because they have to, the majority of workers work paycheck to paycheck. So this is something that is going to be a fundamental need when they retire. And it's really important to advocate and support and really stand against corporations, the state funded programs that want to cut any kind of assistance like this. This is really a fundamental need on a national level that all workers should have and be privy to collecting a pension.
Absolutely. Let's go to Jeremy, and then we'll go to EJ as soon as Jeremy comments.
I got a little guest that just came in the room.
I love that.
So everyone knows she's getting her PJs on. So I would just say, again, you can tell that SEIU, we talk, because I agree with what Andrea just said. I think one of the things that we have to understand is in any society, and really in any industry that we're in, eventually the bill comes due, right? You might want to save today on workers' back, and maybe that gets you a month, maybe that gets you a year, 5 years, or 10 years, but eventually that bill comes due, because we are going to have folks who will get to retirement, they will have nothing, and we have to take care of each other as a society. What we found is that the way that we spend our money, it doesn't make sense, right? We used to have a pension system. People used to be able to enter into a profession, stay in that profession, and make it better. They had a knowledge base, they had a skill set, they were able to pass that skill set down. And now what we find is all across, whether you're talking about this, this state of Michigan as an employer or in private industry, we have a huge recruitment and retention issue. We can't get people to come to jobs. When they do, they don't stay because they're not respected. And I think the pension really goes to kind of show that respect just isn't there for working people anymore. And it's hard to stick around when you need to do the things you need to do to better your family and better your life. And what's tough is that we have a lot of members that they stick in it for a really, really long time, always hoping that maybe we can get there. And we've had success. So don't let me say that we haven't, because we have. But I think as a whole, that big push to move over to the 401k style system and thinking that was going to be it, every study that's been done has shown that it doesn't work. And in fact, you save money staying with what you had before. So I think that tenet that you started with is it's a social contract between the employer and employee that says, if you invest here, I'll invest in you. And unfortunately, we've had too many folks who've said, we're not going to make that investment in you anymore. And then they wonder, why things go downhill and we don't have the services that we used to have. And that's not because of the members, because they put in the work, they put in the time, and they put in everything they need to do.
Yeah, I was one of those employees back in 2011, 2012 through best practices under the Snyder administration who lost. I mean, those contract services were, detrimental to us in a lot of sectors. I want to get to EJ in a second here, but I want to encourage all of our listeners tonight to throw your questions and comments. We'll get to them in just a couple moments. But let's hear from EJ about pensions.
All right. It's crazy because I was talking to a buddy of mine, and as we was talking, in like 2 years he's gonna have 30 years with his employer. So I got kind of happy for him, and he actually is pretty young, and he had other opportunities he could be taking So my whole thing to him was like, hey, you got 2 more years, you can go ahead and leave. You got a full pension. That's 30 years. Only to find out they didn't have none. He didn't have any. He didn't have a pension plan. And for what he told me, that they got rid of it back in the 80s. Now, he is a government employee. So my thing when it comes to that is like, I watch a lot of things on within the news, a lot of feeds, a lot of clips, a lot of politicians, whether they state, whether they even on the federal level. But I see a lot of them going against pensions, but at the same time, a lot of these politicians actually hold pensions, which kind of like it kind of threw me a little bit, because I'm like, how can you go against something that you possess yourself without even saying that you want to give up what you actually have? So I don't, that throws me a little bit. But at the same time, it's like, what are you really in there doing? You know what I mean? When it comes to like talking about things like pensions. Now, when I see employers like with us, every contract, our pension plan get attacked. Even right right now at this point, we have two pension plans within our corporation. And I'm completely against it because I think it becomes a divisive mechanism within the membership. Um, and it's still it's nothing that validates or give it substance of why it was even created like that.
Mm-hmm.
And this happened back in 2003. So when it comes to when it comes to pensions, and I look at anyone who actually giving an employer pretty much their life, because you're giving that employer between 30 to 40 years. I'm in an industry where pretty much a young person retiring possess 40 years, an older person retiring possess 60 years of service. And for them to actually give a company, a corporation, whoever, that much of their life, not time, their life, and not have anything to show for it afterwards. I'm not talking about a 401k. I'm not talking whatever they created on their own. But I'm talking about something that an employer can actually have in place for when they actually finish giving their life to them, that they have something in return, and they could just be comfortable. You know what I mean? Just comfortable. I have a problem when I see that a lot of employers don't have that. And back when I'm from, that's being attacked like on a constant basis now. No matter we have a lot of city employees. A couple of theirs have been attacked. Like I said, every contract negotiations, ours are being under attack. I know some people that we represent, there's like they have none in place. So I mean, when it comes to like pensions and like I said, when I first got hired for U.S. Steel, I didn't understand it. I know the significance of it. Even in 2003, even when I was against, I call it a two-tier pension plan. Even though I was against it, I didn't understand it. But I just knew if you having two of something for somebody to actually have when they retire, something has to be wrong with it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be creating two systems. So when you going back to what you was talking about, to the question, you're talking about state officials, I believe they have a responsibility and an obligation to actually stand for that. I believe they have an obligation to the people that they're representing to actually support that. Because at the same time, they're going to have something in place whenever they give up whatever they have. They're going to have something in place. So, for them to have the audacity to not support it, I just feel like, I'm saying, that's for one, it's disrespectful to the workers, and it's definitely disrespectful to whoever they're representing. So, I mean, just to sum it up, I just think state officials, any politician has an obligation when it comes to pensions to actually support it, back it, and do whatever they can, whether it's resources, stand on public platforms, and support workers, go against corporations who try to be against it. I believe that's their obligation to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you, EJ. And in Michigan, one of the things that elected should do is to uphold the Constitution of the state. And specifically from the Constitution of the state of Michigan, pensions shall not be diminished, although they are continually under attack. I have a quick question I'm going to get to Philan in just a second with one of our audience questions. But I wanted to ask Jeremy and Andrea about a little bit about our new normal. One of the things that I'm most concerned with is we're going to have a lot of folks who are returning to work, and what that new normal is going to look like. What are your concerns about members returning back to the workplace? And could you speak a little bit about the role that labor and organized labor will play in that? Let's start with Jeremy and then go to Andrea.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know that anyone knows what the new normal will be upon return. One of the biggest things I think that organized labor has really pushed, especially in the state of Michigan, is one, we finally came together. One of the biggest problems is we realized that one of us alone was never going to make and get where we needed to go. But what we did do is we reached out to, at least I can speak pricing to them, we reached out to our brothers and sisters in SEIU. So we have a Michigan State Council that's made up of SEIU Local 517M, Andrea's Local Healthcare Michigan, MCO, the Michigan Corrections Organization, as well as Local 1. We came together and started talking about how do we have an impact on the state, local, city level employers? How do we get a seat at that table to make sure that we are talking about what is needed, right? So whether that be with Governor Whitmer and company, or whether that be with the mayor of Detroit. So we came together and then we said, this still isn't good enough, right? We got to be bigger. So we reached out to the UAW, to AFSCME, to MSEA. I'm forgetting somebody. Anyways, we came together with anybody and everybody that would listen. We demanded from the state of Michigan standpoint, we said, you should set the example, right? That if we're going to start talking about reopening and what work sites should look like in private and public businesses, well, state of Michigan, you should set the example. And if you're going to set that example, you better have workers at that table, right? Yeah. So we made a demand, and we asked that they create these work groups. In fact, as we sit here talking, there is a plan that will be submitted by close of business tomorrow for the state of Michigan on how to properly reopen state facilities and sites. So let's take that a step further. Now we're talking about business. So we made a demand that they create these work groups. So I know myself and Andrea, we've had folks that have been appointed to them, covering everything from barbershops to retail stores to parks and rec, anything and anything you could think of. We're trying to get somebody out. In fact, we just got one of our folks from one of our libraries, right, just to talk about how does a library operate, right? Yeah. And Clinton, I got really good folks that are out there talking with their members about how do we get you a seat at that table, because the thing people always forget is the union is not this thing that exists somewhere in a building. The union is the members, right? We're not a corporation. We are a group made up of members. And so giving them that voice, and then them understanding like, hey, by the way, that voice, it's not Jeremy Tripp, it's not Clint Bryan, it's not Andrea, it's you. We're sitting you at the table. You're the representative. That's right. So I think that's been very powerful. And that's the biggest thing is, sometimes we're very polite, and sometimes, we go a little old school union. And when we make a demand, this is one that we're speaking to.
I have to say that with a wink and a nod, because Jeremy and I have had some of those conversations before. He knows that I'm relentless when it comes to getting whatever our members need, and I'm not afraid to ask. Sometimes it's a little more verbose than maybe it needs to be, but as long as our folks get what they need, that's what I'm there for. Andrea, let's talk a little bit about our new normal, especially with you in healthcare. This has got to be a lot to traverse through.
It is a lot. So it's like, what is the new normal? So the new normal is like my brother Jeremy said, it's like we don't know, but we're trying to create and have the ability to create the safest new normal. And, unfortunately for our workers in healthcare, they've been working tirelessly throughout this pandemic this whole time. And it's about ensuring that they have the proper PPE. And I think all establishments are going to have the proper PPE and proper social distancing and working conditions for workers. But in healthcare, it's about having that proper PPE on hand to keep folks safe and to keep our healthcare workers safe throughout this new normal that we're going to be creating. The most vulnerable folks right now, as we see in the state of Michigan and across the nation, are folks that are in nursing homes. So, like my brother said, we have voiced our opinion within the governor's administration. And I believe that I'll be on the congregate care work group to talk about what does nursing homes look like in the new normal. And you know what, it's just, and I like the fact that it's not what Andrea says. It's about what the working folks say, how they're working during this pandemic, what they're seeing that is safe, because they're the ones that are actually working every day and have the ability to speak on what is good, what is bad, and what's happening. A manager can say, these are the steps that we're ensuring to keep folks safe. Are you working that shift? Are you working 12 hours with residents and with patients? And are you the one performing that care to be able to specifically state what's safe and what's not? Workers need a seat at the table to talk about how the new normal creates a really safe path for workers, for residents, for patrons. So it's like a big collaborative effort to have one entity say what it is and how the new normal is going to be is not a fair process. And I know wherever there is a collective bargaining agreement, we will never stand for that, because we have to have a voice and a seat at the table to talk about safety.
Absolutely, it's paramount with labor. I know that we had a statement that we used to say at the United Steelworkers, and I know it rings true with SEIU and our folks at UAW, is that our members should return home to their families in the condition the same way that they left them. You know, it's of paramount importance, and with a virus. And it's very difficult to determine, but I know we've had some conversations about that, Jeremy. I do want to get to an audience question from Yancey. And I'm going to ask, I'm going to tag Philanen on this. I do have a couple comments I wanted to make on it, but Yancey has a question regarding the state of unions in the city of Saginaw. And it says, there is no question that the population within the city has seen a decline. How has this impacted unions in the city? And what policy ideas do you have to further ensure the bargaining power of the unions? I think there's a lot of changes that need to happen. I know in 2020 and 2021, we're going to see some changes with the Civil Service Commission, but it's important. Make sure that you get out and vote. It is of paramount importance to make sure that we are appointing people to seats and electing them, but also those who are going to have our backs. I mean, we've seen it time and time again when folks get in there and things kind of get shuffled around and they don't have our backs. So it's important that we do have a good governor and she's able to appoint folks to these different commissions, but also it's just coming together in solidarity. And what has happened within the city of Saginaw with population decline is because of a lack of jobs. A lot of jobs leaving our community, going overseas. And I know when Andrea and myself grew up over by Malleable Iron, you could tell when a shift would change. It was even probably greater than a hospital. You would have hundreds of folks going down Home Street. And the thing is that has such a ripple effect in our community with small businesses. If they were going to a local watering hole after work or picking up dinner for their family. And it also comes down to home ownership as well. A lot of our housing crisis happened because of a lack of jobs and a lack of opportunity. And that's one of the things, one of the reasons why I'm running is to help create more opportunity for folks and to let them know that, yes, if you want to be here and you want to stay here, we'll have your back and you can be successful. We just have to tap into some of those resources that are available. But when it comes to policy ideas, I think we need to tie bar a lot of legislation to accessibility to a union. I think we've seen that with marijuana. We've seen that. So I think we need to do similar things when it comes to ensuring that that we're hiring good employees and they have the right to organize and collectively bargain for fair wages and benefits. But I want to tap into Philan a little bit, especially with us being on the strike line last year. What do you think that, let me repeat the question for you from Yancey. He wanted to know about the decline in population within the city and how has that affected unions in Saginaw? Oh, are you there, Philan? Oh, he's just getting off mute. It's okay. There we go. Oh, there we are.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I was on mute. You muted me. Everybody. First, I want to back up. Everybody had a good point. It all, the pensions and what had the Corona deal, what had that the impact on that. So, Jeremy and EJ and Andrea, you did a great job with that whole segment. So I have nothing to say about that. But the effect that the union decline, I think you pretty much said it, Clint. We got to get people that's gonna ride for the all unions, the UAW or whatever. If we don't elect people who got our back, who have our back, you know, it doesn't even matter. So that's the problem. We need to start on these local positions. I don't even care about the president position. I mean, I care, but that's not where the fight's at right now because we can't win that fight, but we can win our local fight. We can win that all day. but we're gonna have to make sure that we put people in position that have laborers back. Until that happens, we're just gonna be just doing the norm, whatever that may be.
And we have to make
So.
and we have to make sure that it's easier to organize. I know right now they've there's been some digital. It shouldn't have taken a pandemic for this to happen, but I know that with certifying cards and different things like that for union election, some of that stuff is becoming more digitized, and we're seem to be entering into the 21st century, which is good. But we know that there's always going to be attacks when it comes to labor and organizing. But we have to make it as easy as possible for workers to have a voice on the job, which is it's extremely important. I want to get to EJ with a quick question. What do you think is the most pressing issue facing unions right now?
That's a broad question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna answer it like this. First and foremost, inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And I say this like one thing we got to realize that we represent a lot, and we represent so many communities. So every community has to count. That leads to the next point, because if you, by organizing and you showing the communities that each community counts equally, then people looking at it in a whole different light, not feeling neglected. They're more willing to listen and try to understand versus like kind of digress or just become like kind of resistant to any approach. Now that I've said that, when it comes to unions, in today's time, we also have to be realistic. We have to be realistic, and we have to literally adjust to today's times. And what I mean is this: like a lot of us, we have an approach of the past. The past is not the present, and it's definitely gonna take us to the future. So the thing is, we have to adjust. We have to open ourselves up to actually listen to change, and we got to embrace that. We got to embrace that. One thing we do a lot of, we actually push away. Now, I'm saying that to say this to lead to the next thing. You have a lot of young people that's out there, and one thing we have to stop doing with our young people is treating them like kids. You have a lot of young people, and almost every international union has a young worker component. Utilizing that, you have to understand that these young people, they really just want to get out there and be a part of it. They want to feel like they really are making things happen. But a lot of our approaches to them is cheesy, and it's like we treat them like kids. So the thing is, like, what we don't really understand is those pieces, those young people are literally the change that we've been looking for to actually solidify and sustain our future. All you gotta do is look at everybody that's like part of this discussion right now. Now, I mean, we all started from somewhere, and we all probably had a vision or an understanding of, like, you know what I'm saying, a vision and understanding of what's ahead of us. So we can actually grasp that concept of change, utilize the most significant component that we got within any union out there, within any membership, which is that young worker component, and put it and utilize to the fullest of its extent, which I mean educating. You know what I'm saying? Education, most important, listen and thorough communication. At the same time, don't treat them like kids, but be open-minded to any kind of ideas that they have. Try to get them to like talk about them, but when they talk about them, try to get them to like make it as vivid as possible, so you can see it the same way that they seeing it. So we can literally take we could take our steps to move towards the future. And you gotta. When I said earlier about the inclusion part, those young workers are literally that component that we've been looking for to actually make it where we have a total picture of inclusion in the future. And if we don't have that inclusion, we ruin as a union, because I'm be honest with you, and I'm just being like straight transparent with this. Like what we do, and this just being real. I've seen too many unions, not just where I'm from, not just period. Seeing too many unions really worry about, you know what I'm saying, the white narrative versus the total picture. And until we actually, you know what I'm saying, become transparent enough to embrace inclusion, we're gonna actually fall. And we got like 10 years. You gotta remember this too. We got like 10 years. We got 10 years to kind of make this happen. I mean, we really got to put steps in place, because we got 10 years to make this happen, because we losing and our numbers are steady declining. So we don't actually get this together within 10 years. We're going to see like a real powerful impact to the declination of numbers when it comes to any international union out there. So so that's why I think of that: inclusion, young worker components, and thorough communication on top of organizing.
That's powerful, EJ. How many attendees do you normally have at Black Labor Week? I know it's been growing over the years. I've been watching it.
So like when it comes to the program, this year for the program, we had, I believe, between 220 to 230 people in attendance over the week for volunteers. That will actually be anywhere from at the highest, probably almost 200 volunteers. So they just come in from all across the country.
It's amazing. It's an amazing movement. Right after you go to clintbryant.com, I need you to go check out EJ Jenkins. because it's phenomenal work. And when you see that, with hundreds of folks coming together, there's nothing better. There's nothing better than that, especially with the different components over the week that you guys utilize with volunteering and giving back, letting folks know in the community that, we're not all just a bunch of thugs. We actually care. We're your neighbor.
Right.
We're focused on making our community an even better place. And labor has a huge role to play in that. I do got a question. We do still have time for some audience questions, so go ahead and throw those in the comments. Go ahead, Flynn.
Can I speak on what EJ was saying, though? Kind of piggyback on that. EJ's right. If we don't look it. I go to enough conferences I'm conference out probably for the next 10 years. All right. It don't matter what, from if it's not a civil rights conference to a UAW or constitutional conference, whatever. Look, we got to get these young members engaged, because they're the future. I'm 48 years old. I'm not old, but they're the future.
Flynn, don't tell everybody.
Look at these 30 and 20-year-olds. They're the ones who's coming into plants right now. They're the ones who they're really getting their butts kicked, at the end of the day, because they're just living on these little 401ks and kind of what everybody's talking about. And
2 and 3 tier wage.
We got to get right, and their wage structure is just totally different. So and they're working alongside of us, and we're just doing a lot better than them, and then that's not fair to them, because it's just not. So we got to try to find a way to get them engaged, get them to understand. Look it, man, because they're the future, and we're gonna want them to take care of us when we get older, and so we got to get it in their minds. So I think it's hope, but we don't have time. EJ said 10 years. That might be pushing it, but we're gonna have to get on it, and we're gonna, I know a lot of times we get positions and things like that, and let's be real. Some of us sometimes get positions, and we want to hold on to the position, so we don't want to give nobody else little tiplets to go here and go there. But we gotta be constantly building people up, getting them to understand. That's the only way you're gonna grow. If you don't, you're not gonna grow. You're just gonna have a bunch of ignorant people out on these shop floors, and they're gonna, because one of the number one questions that I hear is this from my members: when things go bad, it's always the union,
Mm.
the union. It's coming from union paying people.
Education is key.
Education
is key.
I go, wait a minute, you the union, fool? Y'all the membership. Why would you be paying dues to something that you don't believe in? Or you not, come on now.
There's a giant U in union.
Right. That's just crazy sounding. So go ahead.
I have to begin to wrap up, but I have a quick question for Jeremy and Andrea, and I'm asking for one tangible thing that should be our top priority when it comes to ensuring that we're protecting our folks in the labor movement. We'll start with Andrea.
I just think that ensuring the best thing we can do to ensure that folks have a voice, that we uplift the voice of the workers collectively is the most important. And what we're seeing across the board, and I really like how my brothers hit on some certain things about inclusion. It's about the diversity and all of the above, and really being inclusive. What we're really seeing in Michigan specifically is the racial component to how COVID is impacting folks of color. And that's a real piece. And that affects union brothers and sisters. And that has to be a conversation if we want to see that change. So I think it's about having a voice in all aspects of the capacity of what it means to be union and what it means to really grow the labor movement as a whole. And the effects that we are seeing in Michigan to really take heed and really be the component of change and the voice for change.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrea. Let's wrap with Jeremy.
Yeah, so I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think something tangible right now that we can actually see an impact is, I know the House Democratic Party, they put out a workers' bill of rights.
Yes.
And it's a series of bills. And are they perfect? They're not. But you know what they are is it's a very, very good start. I think that's something that we can have a direct impact on. And we can point to and say, you want a line in the sand, this is it. We need to, at the very least, have these things done, especially when we have folks working. And I know you're wrapping up, but the one thing I agree wholeheartedly, when we have to reach out, I actually wrote the panelists in the chat saying, we got to meet members where they're at, not expect this. Just doing this, I mean, who does this? I mean, take a look at the state representatives we have right now. How many of them use a platform like this? How many of them go digital? How many of them go beyond the little coffee shop where 3 people showed up?
Oh my God.
Right? They don't. And the fact that you're thinking in this mindset of, how do I get to the masses? How do I get out and directly have people come to me and not, I'm going to pre-can a bunch of questions that I'm going to get some answers and it'll be quick and done. It's let's hear from real people. And I think that's the tangible thing here is that we got to start listening. We do a lot of talking and it's time to start listening.
Yes.
Well, thank you, man. That's going to be difficult to top that, Jeremy. Thank you so much. But it means a lot, and each of you are my friends. I mean, we're family. We're brothers and sisters in this movement. We're committed to ensuring more worker protections. Our folks have a decent living with pay and benefits, and that they're safe. So I just want to thank each of you for joining us tonight. This was powerful. I think we could probably do this again in the near future.
We need to.
Yes, we have to. And that's the only way that we're going to move forward is to organize ourselves. We talk a lot about organizing, but we have got to organize within our silos sometimes. But thank you to each of you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. I have learned so much from each of you on our call tonight. And if anybody does have questions, go ahead and put those in the comment section below. We know we couldn't get to all of them tonight, but we are committed to responding to each and every question. So thank you so much for tuning in. But I also want to encourage you to visit clintbryant.com. And for our Spanish-speaking population, you can go to es.clintbryant.com or text Clint to 22999. Thank you so much to each of our stakeholders. I know that there are many other things that you could be doing tonight. I know the weather is breaking in Michigan, but it means so much that you were able to join us tonight and that we could connect. And I also want to encourage my friends to follow me on each of your social media platforms. At Clint Bryant MI. That's at Clint Bryant MI. And one last note, yard signs are in. I know that I've received several text messages and inboxes on each of the social media platforms. We are going to get those to you, but continue. If you want a yard sign, let us know so we can get those placed in your yards from a member of Team Bryant. And another thing, I just want to let you know that we're thinking about you, and you can go to clintbryant.com/yard sign. But good night, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our dinner and dialogue. And stay tuned. We have some really great updates, and continue to visit at clintbryant.com and on Facebook. So I appreciate your kind comments and your encouraging notes. So everyone stay safe and please stay home and be well. Thank you so much.